Shiny Forehead here, bringing you a brand new video topic. Now, this one was actually pitched to me by one of the mods on Discord. Shout out to the True King, brother. Thank you so much. Hope you're doing well. And he basically said, Alex, why don't you talk about, and I think people want to know, what are the 5 characters in Marvel Future Fight that you think every account should have max build? And it's actually a really good idea for a video. It's not going to be exactly what I talk about, but it was the inspiration for this video. And I basically wanted to take his idea and then kind of tweak it into the following answer, or the following question, which I will then answer, which is, can I name 5 characters that every account should have built with no overlap? Now, here's where it gets interesting, because sure, I could rattle off 5 characters that are the best for PvE right now. You need Luna, you need Storm, you need Zombie Doctor Strange, you need this, you need that. They're all going to need the exact same build. You need a Mighty Rage, you need a Brilliant Rage, you need the, and you're going to be looking at your resources and you're going to say, well, Alex, I don't have this many Mighty Rages. I don't have this many Odin's Blessings of the same type for the same, attacking character, energy attack, physical attack. I don't have that many magics or that many strikes to just double, triple, quadruple dip, because you recommended me all these energy attack characters or all these physical attack characters. So why don't we approach this in a different way? I have to pick out 5 characters, and you can try to guess along as we go through here. There's going to be no overlap. Obviously, there has to be overlap between physical and energy attackers, because it's literally not possible, right? There's only 2, and there's 5 characters. So obviously that. But no, what I'm going to suggest is 5 characters that I think can benefit any account at almost any stage of the account's progress for multiple game modes that also will have value into the future without being a max build, and also without any CTP overlap. So this is the goal that I'm trying to achieve today, because it was actually harder than I think, and then maybe you think. I don't know, maybe it's really easy for you, but it's actually kind of hard for me. And it took me like a good half an hour of sitting there at my computer running the calculations in my head of different characters and what they can bring to the table. So let me start off with the first one here to get kind of an easy CTP out of the way and to sort of pave the way for the rest of my thinking. And I think the first one has to be Storm. It has to be Storm, and it has to be a Mighty Rage. So I think this is the first character that any account, if they're, I know I have a Brilliant, but if you have multiple Rages, and we made a separate video where we talked about like when should you go for Mighty CTPs, when should you go for Brilliant CTPs. If you have 5, 6 plus characters that all have a Rage, and you start to get your 7th, your 8th, your 9th, your 10th Rage, congratulations, first of all. Second of all, it's not as difficult as it sounds. There's so many ways to get free CTPs nowadays every month in Marvel Future Fight by grinding. But I think you should reforge Storms first, because she just provides you so much value. She's going to absolutely obliterate World Boss and World Boss Legend. She's going to allow you to climb with only a slight hiccup with some difficulty here against Black Swan, because she has type disadvantage, and a little bit here when Corvus is up and not Proxima. But otherwise, she's just going to blow up bosses, and she's easily my best performer for the most recent World Boss Legend, which does indicate that she'll have future value because she's so good at the highest possible stage. Unless, of course, we get more legends that are speed types, which I find hard to believe, considering there's 2 here already. In addition to that, she's going to do, as we already know, Alliance Battle, Extreme, and Legend. She completely obliterates that content. She completely obliterates GBR if that's what you need. She's not great for farming, unfortunately, so she's not going to get the nod for things like Dimension Rifts, or maybe necessarily. She can do Dispatch, but she's not going to get the nod for Rifts. But she's also really, really good for zombie survival. So you get like an all-in-one package. That's my first pick. Now you're probably thinking, Alex, there's no overlap on CTPs, so you can't pick any other character for a CTP of Rage. What is this list? That's the rub, my friend. This is where it gets interesting. So my second choice is actually Silver Surfer. Yeah. And believe it or not, I think Silver Surfer is a great pick because historically, the devs have never done him dirty. And this is very rare. It took me a while to realize this, but this is very rare for a character that has 2+ uniforms to never have a bad uniform. I don't know if it's something that the MCU or Marvel, Bill Roseman, mandated to Netmarble. You cannot make a bad Silver Surfer. But my friends, we have never gotten a bad Silver Surfer. He was meta. As soon as he fell off, he became meta again. Not as soon as he fell off, but he fell off. and then he became meta again. Now, he's not at the top of the meta right now, but he's still comfortably in the top 5, top 6 situation. That is with the benefit of a team-up collection, so that is kind of buffing his value beyond where it ought to be. You know, he'll be a little bit worse without that team-up collection for sure, and as other PvP characters particularly get access to team-up collections, he will suffer. But my whole thing with Silver Surfer is you don't need a stacked build for him to be good, because most of his value comes from Reflect. And that is always going to be true. So he has that sort of like future-proofed value because he's always going to have that Reflect. So he's always going to be a threat, in particularly when you can take him into content and play manually. You can really abuse the AI and get lots of cheesy, in this case, Ws, by using the Reflect effectively. And the thing is, I know I have a very expensive build on him, but you can actually just get started today with a Mighty Authority. It's not going to be the best build, it's not going to be the best build for Silver Surfer by far. For sure, it's not going to be the best build. Arguably, a Mighty Conquest would be better. But a Mighty Authority is not bad. The Steel proc gives him super guard break immunity, he gets access to crit damage, he gets access to the invincibility, and he gets access to tons of extra time to reflect and get kills. And that's basically what you're trying to do. And unlike other stronger PvP characters, he doesn't need his artifact as a prerequisite. Sure, it's nice, it's great to have an extra damage to supervillains and superheroes, but it's not a prerequisite. So Silver Surfer is actually my next choice, also because he's just very easy to build. You just go into GBR 10 times, boom, you're done. You don't have to go through an epic quest, you don't have to go through all this stuff, blah, 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 etc. Unfortunately, he doesn't have a lot of PvE value. That's really the only place where he struggles. But otherwise, I think he is a great choice with a build that basically doesn't interfere with the rest of your roster goals. My third choice here is probably going to be the most controversial, but it is Hela. And Hela is my third choice and my only support character choice because of her flexibility. So much like the first choice there, or sorry, not the first choice in Storm, but much like my next couple of choices, Hela has value for both PvE and PvP. Now, unlike Storm and Surfer, she kind of needs her she does need her artifact for PvP, but she also kind of doesn't. She definitely has a higher sort of minimum requirement than Silver Surfer or Storm does, but also if you just adjust your expectations, she doesn't, because she's always going to have the leadership, which is very, very good. It gives you energy attack. And then she also has the uniform effect, which gives you ignore dodge, which is useful for everybody. And then it also allows you to deal more damage to heroes and reduce the damage you take from heroes. Now, this is mostly a PvP ability, but not always, right? You can certainly pair this with her in content where, against PvE content where you're going to face heroes, and she'll be able to help you with that. She doesn't do any damage on her 1 to 5, but her 6 skill does tremendous damage, so you can use her in PvE. She is proc friendly. You can basically use a multitude of different builds on her. I suggest a support build, so I actually think the best option here for sort of like entry-level builds would either be like a Mighty Insight or a Mighty Liberation, and just create this support character. The good thing about Hela additionally is she's good at tier 3, so you don't even have to tier 4 her. She has that window. You can take her to tier 4, but you don't need to. I thought of other supports in this category. I thought of Shuri, because Shuri basically has all of the same benefits of Hela without the artifact downside. But with Shuri, you don't get any sort of PvE value on her end, right? Shuri can't do any damage. Shuri's not tier 4able, so she has much less flexibility than Hela. Again, I think some people will disagree with me here, but I just think Hela is a character that is essentially already future-proofed herself because of how rare her buff is on her uniform. She's the only character in the game that gives other characters this insane advantage versus heroes, and you can use Hela, you can pair Hela with other stronger PvP characters like Surfer or whoever, and you can use it to hunt down PvP teams that are filled with heroes, and she can actually give you a greater return on your weekly crystals from things like Timeline Battle without even having a build attached to her at all, just by getting the uniform. Very few characters can do that. Colossus is basically the only other one that I would recommend, or maybe in some arguments you could say Ebony Maw, but those are going to be more expensive characters, harder to farm, or they have downsides, they're not tier 4 yet, or they're very expensive as far as building them as native tier 2s. So I think Hela actually represents and kind of inhabits a very, very rare space. Now, My second to last character is a little bit of a bias that I think every account should build on some level, but hear me out. Hear me out. It's not Scarlet Witch. It's Wolverine. Now, Wolverine is the second most expensive character on this list for me. I didn't really want to choose him, but there are very few characters like Wolverine that exist in the game today. And what I mean to say is, your initial build for him, you're probably wondering, well, what's he going to say? He already used Authority. He already used Rage. He already used Liberation. What could he possibly, what is he going to say? Conquest? What is he going to say? Greed? Neither. I'm going to say Energy. You can get Wolverine started on your account with just a regular or mighty energy, and he will shred PvE content. He will obliterate PvE content for you. He's super easy to play, super tanky. Yes, he's expensive to build because you have to go through the epic quest, but you have to go through the epic quest anyways. You want to be able to unlock Jean Grey in the future, Magneto, etc. So you're going to want to do that no matter what. And in the onset, before you get his artifact, he absolutely needs it for PvP. So he has no PvP value to start. I understand that. So you start him off with a mighty energy or a regular energy or whatever, even a damage proc obelisk, and he just obliterates PvE content. He just not with the flame damage one, but whatever. He just obliterates PvE content. World boss. He can do farming. He can do rift farming for you because he's actually not bad for, like, I mean, he's more expensive than who you would build for rift farming, like Thor, who I thought of putting on this list. Okay, but he's less expensive than, let's say, like seasonal rogue, for example, right? Or zombie Doctor Strange or something like that. Well, same price as zombie Doctor Strange, I guess. But anyways, my point is, he can do basically everything for you. He can do dispatch, he can do dimension rifts, he can do world boss, he can do GBR, he can do ABX, he can do ABL. Not the best. Certainly not the best. Certainly not with an obelisk or a SADP of energy. But he's going to get you early results. And then, as your account progresses and as you get better options, you get Gladiator, you get Venom, you get whatever, you know, you sort of like, you sunset your Wolverine, you still have him built. So as soon as you pull, by the way, you can farm it for free. As soon as you pull a 3-star or 4-star version of his artifact, boom, you can move him over to PvP. And now he's a whole new headache for enemies, and now you can use him in PvP. So his value is essentially 100%. And it just depends on whether you're building him for this side of the game or whether you're building him for that side of the game. But I just find that level of value so difficult to replicate in Marvel Future Fight. And because all characters end up costing a similar amount anyways, besides like some initial cost differences with epic quests and stuff like that, you're not really talking about, like, he's not 2, 3, 4 times more expensive than some other characters, and he's going to provide way more value. Like, sure, yes, Venom is cheaper. Absolutely, Venom is cheaper to build, but Venom has 0 value for PvP. Doesn't matter if you have his artifact, doesn't matter. He doesn't have any value. And the other thing is, Venom doesn't have build options. It's just Rage, baby. With Wolverine, I'm suggesting energy or a proc obelisk off the rip, but you can go Rage, you can go Greed, you can go Conquest, you can go in so many different directions. So I just find that to be super duper valuable and super duper flexible. And so that brings us to my last pick, which is Sentry. Sentry is the most expensive character on this list, one of the most expensive characters in the game. I totally recognize that. It's not the top 5, or it's not the 5 that I chose that are the most economically, you know, the value versus the ROI kind of thing, the value that you get versus what you invest. But fewer characters in this game are as good as Sentry with as little of a build, right? Sentry is insanely good with almost no build. So I don't even have to recommend a CTP for you guys, because you don't even have to run one. You can run him with an obelisk and he'll still do well. He'll hit quite hard in PvE, surprising to a lot of players, I think. And then whenever you're ready to bring him into PvP, he will do extremely well for you. And so the CTP I would recommend is actually a Mighty Greed for Sentry. And that's basically what I would say makes the most sense for him. But you could also flip it around and go in a different direction. But keep in mind that for Sentry, I debated, like, you know, Null and other characters. Keep in mind that when you compare here, Null doesn't perform at Sentry's level without Agent Venom. So immediately that disqualifies him. But furthermore, Sentry doesn't have a team-up collection. He doesn't. Silver Surfer does. Ghost Rider does. Wolverine does. Right? A lot of the characters have team-up collections. Sentry does not. What happens when Sentry gets a team-up collection? So Sentry's going to be really, really good for you for years to come. He's right now, he's basically 1A or 1B in PvP. Not bad for PvE. what happens in the future when he gets a new uniform, when he gets a team up collection, whatever. He's going to obliterate content for you for you know, months and years to come, whether it's PvE or whether it's PvP. And the nice thing here about Sentry, like Wolverine, is you can build him for PvE first, and then once you're comfortable enough with the build level, you can then transition him over to PvP. So I would even say you could rock like a mini Rage proc or an Obelisk proc, depending on how you enjoy the gameplay. And then once you feel like you've gotten enough juice out of the lemon for PvE, you then switch him over to PvP, and he starts just mowing down enemies and getting you extra monthly crystals. So those would be the 5 characters running from Storm to Silver Surfer to Hela to Wolverine to Sentry, 3 S's, that I think every account should have built on some level. Now, the level of build you have is obviously up to you. It's up to you how you care about the characters, how you value them, what game modes you value. You don't have to take any of this advice. This is just my opinion, standard PSA. You can build whoever you want. You should build whoever you want and play the game your way. But I just find that there are, in a sea of characters, there are very few characters that are as versatile and have as much longevity as the 5 that I've mentioned. So hit me up in the comments down below. Let me know if you can think of a better 5 than mine. Thank you so much for watching. Smash the like button, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.